and the 58th lecture. Let us discuss on just transition framework. Friends, in the initial days, we have discussed about this term, we brought out this term in terms of just transition. The concept, the idea of this is that this is when, because of the climate change, we are doing lot of shifts which are because of climate change. So we say that to transit from one to other, which is happening immediately in a just transition sense. So that gives us lot of changes from one state to another. So coming to that, with respect to the India's climate sector is concerned, India's just transition sector is concerned, we will discuss about this, and particularly we will see what is India's point of view or take as far as this just transition is concerned, and also we will discuss it in the context of coal industry, because in the coal industry where a lot of phase out is happening, fossil fuel, we are saying that fossil fuel usage will be less and more of the renewable energy resources will be generated to cope up with zero emission. And we have committed a kind of target or did a self-pledge in terms of achieving a target as far as the 2035, the third version, or you say 3.0 version of INDC. So if we are committing that 60% of the energy will come from the renewable sources, and gradually the phasing down or slowing of the fossil fuel usage will happen. So what will happen to the workers, they who are working in the coal industries, the coal miners and all other things? So this is what we'll try to understand in terms of an example. And over the state of Jharkhand, where you know that Jharkhand, Odisha and Bihar, we have lot of coal, lot of mines. So that will help us in terms of understanding this. So the next is a kind of state level climate context, SAPCC. The third point what we will be discussing is the phase-wise representation of the just transition interventions from current to 2070, and what are the trade-offs. Towards end, we will try to discuss what are the trade-offs in terms of climate technology, adaptation, economic and social and environmental dimension. So one is the technology, the other side is the socio-economic, third side is the environment. So what is the trade-off among these three? And to begin with, India's just transition framework. India's just transition seeks to a low carbon economy by 2070, as we have already taken a so much of laws and committed to achieve net zero by 2070. So this protects the livelihood, supports workers and ensures equity in particularly the coal dependent regions, which is the fossil fuel. And the focus areas, the transition covers coal mine, thermal power plant, cement, steel plants, and also automobile industries. And the targeted communities could be towards focusing on regions. So as I just mentioned, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, these three states are dominantly having coal dependent economies and also vulnerable to mine closure. Let's say we are moving to renewable sources, and all the coal mines which are fossil fuel based will close it. So it will affect the economy of these states. It will affect the social status of the people who are dependent on this coal mining or the activities around the coal mining. So this community will be affected. The key strategies are reskilling. So this coal workers or the miners, they need to be trained and reskilled in terms of diversifying them for new and green opportunities. So whatever the new opportunities are coming up, so these people, these workers, they need to be reskilled so that they will adapt to the new options, new opportunities that would lead to their livelihood and economic sustenance. The diversification, developing alternative livelihoods in affected regions. So, the regions, particularly let's say coal, we are talking here with respect to coal, the coal mining area regions. So, here alternate livelihood can be thought of. So, the livelihood which was which is previously the around the coal mining activities now need to be diversified in these affective means likely to be affected regions. The financial inclusions, using blended finance and according to supporting sustenance finance to ensure a fair transition. So there has to be a blended finance mechanism that would support the sustainable finance, so that there will be a sustainable transition as far as the finance is concerned. Look, these four: reskilling, that means who are going to lose their job or to be affected with this, has to be trained with respect to new job or acquiring new skill. Diversification, alternative livelihood has to be provided, and also the financial transition in terms of blended finance to a sustainable finance to a ensuring a fair transition. So, three things. What are the challenges? As far as the challenges is concerned in this just transition framework, in informal sector, gender and financial constraints. As far as the informal sector is concerned, over 90% of the India's workforce is informal. So that means it increases the risk for those who are dependent on carbon intensive sectors. As far as the gender is concerned, ensuring women's participation and protecting their livelihoods in shifting industries. And the third challenge is the financial constraint, the huge investment needed for a low carbon transition. You need a lot of money. So that is very, very important, because the huge investment requirement is there, and where from it will and how it will come. And as far as the policy priority is concerned, India's approach highlights the right to develop, ensuring that mitigation costs do not fall on the most vulnerable side. So, a transition that creates decent work opportunities, social inclusion and poverty eradication, while protecting and expanding natural asset base is what is India looking for within the just transition framework. The just transition in India means ensuring the net zero by 2070. This pathway should prioritize equity, inclusivity and procedural justice by protecting the rights of the livelihood. So let us see in terms of the livelihood of people such as the coal miners. We are taking example of these coal miners. So coal miners and their dependent family, formal and informal workers, coal mining communities and mineral rich states, particularly in Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Jharkhand. Vulnerable population displayed by large scale renewable infrastructure and land use changes. Women farmers and agricultural workers without securing land or resources right. Marginalized groups, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and religious minorities. Now let us look at the four pillars of just transition framework. So equity, particularly social equity. Diversification as far as economic is concerned, so economic diversification, governance and participation, global justice. These four: equity, economic diversification, governance and global justice. These four form the major or the four core pillars as far as just transition is concerned. So they all lead to sustainable and equitable transformation. Under social equity, there has to be fair distribution of cost and benefits. Workers and communities at the center has to be taken care, and their reskilling and income protection also needs to be taken care. As far as the economic diversification is concerned, new industries in fossil fuel regimes, green investment corridors, or local supply chains. These are the other economic diversification can be thought of, and can be the people who will be affected can be engaged there. The governance and participation, inclusive policy design, indigenous rights, social dialogue, and tripartite forums. Global justice, particularly finance flows to developing nations, technology transfer, loss and damage mechanisms, and CBDR principles. Now you see, all these four, they form the core pillars of just transition framework. So the theory and principles, there are three, particularly the procedural justice, distributive justice, and the restorative justice. So in terms of procedural justice, we ask who bears the cost and who receives the benefits. In terms of the distributive justice, we ask who decides this. And in terms of the restorative, we ask whose knowledge and identity are really valued for. So let us discuss about the procedural justice first. The principle underscores the importance of a fair and inclusive decision-making process. It ensures that all stakeholders, especially those directly affected by the transition, are actively involved and have a voice in decision-making process. Distributive justice, it recognizes the challenges posed by the transition, particularly for communities and workers directly dependent on coal, and aim to ensure that outcomes are balanced and fair for all involved parties. Restorative justice focuses on ensuring that local communities they benefit from the global clean energy transition, and this principle seeks to heal and provide redress to communities that have been adversely affected in the past. So now let us take example as far as the coal sector is concerned. The just transition framework revolves around the structural transformation of coal sector, advocating a fundamental change in the way policymakers and public authorities must approach a transition in the coal sector, considering both institutional, that is part A, and the functional, that is part B aspect. So let us have a look at the institutional aspect that falls under part A. As far as the institutional aspect is concerned, there are three divisions can be made: national, state, and local. In terms of national level, establish National Just Transition Authority. The roles could be monitor coal mine closure and repurposing, mobilize domestic and international finance, allocate funds to coal dependent states. Now moving on to little state level, it talks about create state level just transition task forces at state level. The responsibility could be regional transition planning, address revenue loss and economic impacts, promote skill development and entrepreneurship, ensure coordination with local bodies. The third is with respect to local level. So at the local level, set of district level accountability bodies, members particularly the PRIs, municipality representatives, civil society and unions, government and coal company officials. The functions are or could be prepare and implement mine closure plans, ensure community participation and transparency. Coming to part B, which covers the functional aspects, it addresses key challenges in coal mining regions, implements targeted interventions for a smooth transition. In terms of consensus building, yes, capacity building of district and coal officials, strengthening participatory governance and awareness among local communities, they all fall under the consensus building. Moving on to the functional aspects, the second one is the socioeconomic transformation. There needs to be four types or divisions. First is address informal workspace challenges, promote reskilling and alternative livelihood, ensure gender inclusive development, and third, improve social infrastructure. The third point is green development. Develop clean infrastructure, land reclamation and mine repurposing, and reduce environmental risks. Phase out implementation, particularly in terms of the structured way, short term, medium term, and long term, and at different levels at state and district or local scale, state level, and also the national level. So let us see the state action plan on climate change we have at as far as India is concerned. So this has been taken from the source of published by Terry, Just Transition Framework for Sustainable Future in India's Coal Mining Regions. So as far as these three states are concerned, you can see Odisha, Jharkhand, and Chhattisgarh as the climate change risk in mining and mitigation and possible just transition measures. So you can see in terms of climate change risk in mining for Odisha state, heat waves affecting the miners, environmental degradation, and also the abandoned mines. So these are affecting these are the climate change risk in mining areas. So what are the mitigation and possible just transition measures to overcome these risks? As far as Odisha is concerned, the 7 points have been mentioned here. First is regional sustainable mining plan. So region wise, because each region will have different exposure to heat waves or environmental degradation level or abandonment as far as the minings are concerned. So regional sustainable mining plans has to be in place. Then reclamation and rehabilitation of old abandoned mines. So there has to be plans. Heat wave shelters in mining areas needs to be brought out. So wherever heat wave is higher, there has to be the shelters to cope up to escape from the heat waves. The fourth is accessible drinking water. Fifth is cleaning technologies for coal mining, coal bed methane exploration, and ultra clean coal production. As far as Jharkhand is concerned, heavy rainfall impact causing silting downstream, land transformation from forest to mining, and greenhouse gas emissions due to coal mining activities. Coming to the mitigation from with respect to these climate change risks in mining sector in Jharkhand. So we can have the mitigation and possible just transition measures such as coal bed methane exploration, private sector initiative. So private sector initiative is also visualized as one of the just transition measures. Localized climate modeling. So if we do very localized climate modeling, we can come out with solutions for that. And then resource auditing and water conservation, public-private partnership, and also social and environmental compliance. Coming to Chhattisgarh, similarly renovation of thermal power plants, adaptation of supercritical technology, fly ash utilization, and exploration of alternative energy sources. So this talks about the risk identified in mining sector, particularly coal mining, in space of major coal producing states, particularly in India, that comprises of Odisha, Jharkhand, and Chhattisgarh states. Moving on to the thematic framework, we understand that in order to achieve the net zero goal and create an enabling framework for sustainable transition, the these thematic areas are identified as important to support the transition process as far as Jharkhand is concerned. Look at the thematic transition, the areas, the thematic areas which are identified to support the transition process as far as the Jharkhand state is concerned. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and this 4, so it makes 8 in totality have been identified. The first is livelihood transition. Yes, it is really important because it has a what you say direct linkage with respect to just transition is concerned. Energy transition, decarbonization pathways, the green hydrogen mission, and then coal transition, sustainable mobility transition, institutional framework, investment and finance. So these 8 areas we have been identified as the 8 important thematic areas that that can support or we need to work on in terms of supporting the transition processes. So India's top coal producing states, what are the key concerns as far as they are concerned? These 3: high dependence on extractive industries, significant state revenue coming from the mining sector, and increased climate vulnerability. So we need to really give solutions to these 3 states as far as the just transition is concerned. The SAPACs recognize combined risk of climate change impacts, environmental degradation from mining, and also if you take all these 3, Jharkhand, Odisha and Chhattisgarh states, they are the most climate vulnerable regions as far as India is concerned. So I'll repeat once again the 8 different thematic areas which have been identified to support the transition process: the livelihood transition, energy transition, decarbonization pathways, green hydrogen mission, coal transition, the sustainable mobility transition, investment and finance, institutional framework. Case study: Jharkhand's task force on sustainable just transition as far as India as a case study is concerned. So Jharkhand task force demonstrates how real world transitions require aligning technology feasibility, economic trade-offs and social justice through coordinated governance. So Jharkhand, particularly coal dependency and transition challenge, one of the India's largest coal reserve states is Jharkhand. Some districts derive more than 80% GDP from coal economy. So in Jharkhand, many of these districts they derive up to 80% of their GDP from this coal-based economy. So it is totally dependent. So how dependence on high dependence on coal mining, both formal and informal jobs, energy-intensive industries, particularly steel industries. So the key issue in terms of transition risk, that job will be affected, livelihood will be affected, and regional economy will be affected. So this leads to formation of task force by Jharkhand government. Objective: develop a low carbon just transition roadmap, balance economic growth and job creation, and also climate commitments. Core mandate: identify non-fossil fuel pathways, assess economic impacts, social impacts, workers and communities, recommend policy interventions, investment strategies and financing mechanisms. Institutional strength: multi-stakeholder model, 17 plus state departments involved, including environment, mines, industry, labor, energy and finance, supported by the CEDD, that means Center for Environment and Energy Development in India, and there are additional stakeholders, the CPCB pollution control boards, and you can say central and state pollution control boards, the banking institutions and the livelihood mission. So but as a case study of Jharkhand, which is in most of the district they derive 80% of their GDP from coal economy, just transition is going to address or going to affect many things, including job, livelihood, and regional economy. So it needs to be addressed very carefully and meticulously. Now moving on, the trade-off. In terms of the trade-off, when improving one objective that requires compromising with another, that's the trade-off. So in climate transition, the same policy can advance economic, social, and environmental goals while simultaneously constraining others. So the key trade-offs in policy, particularly climate policy: you reduce emission, maintain economic growth; adopt new technology, manage cost and social impact. So it's a trade-off. So on the one hand, go ahead in terms of or keep on reducing the emissions, still maintaining the sustained economic growth. But at certain level, if the reduction in emission is very less, that means industrial process and other activities are slowed down, that might affect the what you say, maintaining sustainable economic growth. So there we need to maintain a critical balance, or we say maintaining a trade-off. Prioritize mitigation and ensure adaptation funding. So you prioritize mitigation, but also ensure funding as far as the adaptation mechanism is concerned. Adapt to new technology, but also you see the management, the cost and also the social impact are also in balance. So these are the very critical, or you say very important or difficult trade-offs to be maintained or to be balanced. So why the trade-off exists? Limited financial resources, because you have limited financial resources, you have to optimize. Uneven technological readiness, competing political priorities, and also region-wise there are inequality and the justice also. So we have to take care of all this in terms of finance, technological advancements, political and regional equity and justice, so that the trade-off can be very well be maintained or be balanced. Look at this in graphics. In terms of the economic, social and environmental trade-offs in climate transition, you can see here that the economic trade-offs in climate technology adaptation, the upper left. Upper right, we have the social trade-off and climate tech adaptation, and the below or the lower one is your environmental trade-off and climate technology. So climate technology vis-a-vis economic trade, environmental trade and social trade. So look at this. As far as the economic trade is concerned, the carbon tax implementation, large scale hydroelectric projects, the modular renewable energy system, and the carbon capture and storage technology. So all these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 have been indicated, have given different indications. So it is very well understood that the climate technology adaptation is important, and it affects the economic trade, affect the economic sector, and a trade-off needs to be maintained. As far as the social sector is concerned, the trade-off between the social sector and the climate technology adaptation, the climate as far as the carbon tax implementation in terms of economic, in terms of social sector, it is the carbon pricing reforms, and as far as the environment is concerned, it is solar energy and careful planning is concerned. Similarly, as far as economic is concerned, number 2, the modular or renewable energy system. Here in terms of social sector, the rapid deployment of large projects, and also here in terms of the large hydel projects are maintaining a negative or a negative trade-off or a balance. Coming to large scale hydroelectric projects, and then you have local air pollutants from biomass, gradual transition to green jobs, and also the transmission corridors and participatory just transition approaches. So look at this, they all very well describe the various trade-offs at on one hand climate technology adaptation, and on the other hand in terms of economic, social and environmental sectors. We have taken help of these 4 literature to prepare the slides, and coming to conclusion, a just transition is essential for India's net zero 2070 pathway. Yes, we need to move from one to another in terms of approaches, in terms of the technology development, and also fossil fuel to renewable sources. So that is leading to just transition. So ensuring that the shift of a low carbon economy protects the livelihood of workers, coal dependent community and vulnerable population. So we need to maintain a balance between the social, environmental and economic sectors while moving or while going for just transition. An effective and fair transaction must integrate procedural, distributive and restorative justice to guarantee inclusive decision making, equitable cost sharing and remediation of past environmental harms. So, critically, trade-offs in climate technology adaptation are unavoidable, but we need to maintain balance. So, that's what is the trade-off. Now, coming to the multi-level governance. So, multi-level governance means implementing this transition requires multiple level governance, as we discussed, in terms of ground level or the local level, that is the district level, the state level and national level. So they all together at various levels, at the various state and various sectors, as we discussed, social, economic and environmental sector, will really maintain the just transition beautifully or up to its expectation. So this is what we discussed as far as the India's just transition framework is concerned. And thank you very much for listening.